Welcome back to Pelangi 21. Today I will show you a 2020 American drama film titled Uncle Frank. In 1969, 14-year-old Betty lives in Creekville, South Carolina with her family. She loves when her Uncle Frank, a professor, comes to visit from New York City, as he's the only one who talks to her like a real person. Her grandfather, Daddy Mac, is always cruel and cold to Frank, which Betty doesn't understand since Frank is so kind, funny, and considerate. Betty asks Frank if she can visit him someday. She dreams of going to New York. He tells her if she does well in school she can go anywhere she wants and be who she wants to be. He tells her once she gets out of a small town she can discover a world she never knew. She tells him she wishes she wasn't named Betty. He tells her she can change it, and she likes Beth better. He tells her if she ever gets in trouble, she should call him before anyone else. In 1973, Beth goes out to New York for college, accompanied by her parents Kitty and her father, Frank's brother Mike. They have dinner at Frank and his girlfriend Charlotte's place. No one in the family has heard of Charlotte, and Charlotte says it's because Frank was worried what the family would think of him dating a Jewish woman. At college, Beth begins dating a boy named Bruce who is very excited to take Frank's class. Beth tries to see Frank, who has been very busy, and she and Bruce overhear a colleague asking him about his party that evening. They go there, and Wally opens the door. He has heard all about Beth and is thrilled to meet her. While Bruce and Beth are at the party, Wally runs into Charlotte. He is still jealous Charlotte go to meet Frank's family. It becomes clear that Frank and Wally are boyfriends and Charlotte pretended to be his girlfriend in front of the family. Bruce then leaves Beth alone and attempts to seduce Frank, revealing he was not interested in Beth romantically, but Frank rejects him. Bruce leaves in a hurry and doesn't tell Beth the reason. Frank finds Beth completely drunk and takes care of her with the help of Wally. Wally is upset that Frank smoked pot since he is a recovering alcoholic. Frank comes out to Beth, tells her that Wally is his boyfriend of 10 years, and tells her about Bruce. He helps Beth into the guest room. The next morning, Beth has breakfast with Frank and Wally. Frank asks if Beth feels different around him, but Beth feels like nothing has changed. He says that there were a lot of gay people around her, but they were still hiding and maybe Beth didn't realize it. He tries to convince Beth not to tell anyone in their family. Wally explains he isn't out to his family because they are in Saudi Arabia, where he would be executed for being gay. Frank's mother Mama calls and tells Frank that Daddy Mac has died of a heart attack. Kitty won't let Beth take the plane home. That's why Frank decides to drive with Beth for the funeral. Wally wants to come with them, but Frank doesn't want him to go. Wally feels Frank is pushing him away, and says that he will need him there, but Frank still doesn't change his mind. On the road, Frank and Beth become closer, with Beth asking all sorts of questions about Frank's real life. She asks who the first boy he ever had anything with was, and Frank tells her a boy from school. He flashes back to spending time with Sam at the lake. Later, Frank notices a car following them and stops the car. He gets out only to discover it's Wally. Wally tells Frank he forgot his razor and tie, and he rented a car. Frank is angry, but Wally tells him not to act like he's not happy to see him. Frank says he can't meet his family or come to the funeral, and Wally says okay but that Frank can always come to him. They stay at a hotel, and the next day Beth rides with Wally. Wally tries to ask Beth about her family. Meanwhile Frank has more flashbacks of being 16 and kissing Sam for the first time. Frank's car breaks down, and they leave the car at a mechanic. They continue their journey, but then stop for ice cream. Wally realizes that something was bothering Frank, then he tries to calm Frank down by saying that his father can't hurt him anymore, but Frank says that it wasn't his father but he was thinking about Sam. Frank flashes back to kissing Sam in his room and being discovered by Daddy Mac. When they arrive in Creekville, the clerk knows Frank and is disgusted by him, and Frank tells Wally to wait 10 minutes before checking into his own room. Before he sees his family, Frank stops and buys booze. He tells Beth not to tell Wally. Later, Mike talks to Frank and begins crying, telling him how sorry he is he never kept in touch. Frank drinks more in the bathroom, while Wally calls his mom. Meanwhile, Beth accidentally mentions Wally to her mother. She and Frank come up with a lie that he's a stranger they met. Later Wally sees Frank, and recognizes he's been drinking and confronts him, saying he won't go through this again. At the funeral, Frank flashes back to his father telling him if he sees Sam again, he will kill them both. He calls him a slur, and tells him if he goes down that path he will burn in hell. At the motel, Wally finds Frank's booze bottles and throws them out. Frank's sister Neva, who knows Frank is gay and about Wally, wants Frank to bring him so he can meet Frank's family. At the reading of the will, everyone is horrified when the lawyer reads that Mac has left Frank with nothing but disgust for the perversion he engages in with other men and the shame that he carries my name. Frank flees and drunkenly drives away. He remembers his past, about him meeting with Sam, telling him they couldn't see each other anymore, and repeated to Sam the same things his father said to him. He told Sam never to come near him again. Later, Frank found a note from Sam, telling him he would never be normal and he was sorry. Frank rushed to the lake, and found Sam drowned, having taken his own life. In present day, Frank walks the dock where he once found Sam. Beth goes to the motel to find Frank, and tells Wally what happened. Wally, who knows about Frank's past, suggests they head to the lake. Beth and Wally only find Frank's clothes on the dock's edge. They assume he has killed himself and return to the motel, when Frank suddenly returns, telling them he's just gone for a swim. Wally tries to get Frank to see what he's done and to stop drinking, but Frank won't listen. The two get into a fight, and Frank calls Wally a slur and punches him in the face. Frank goes to the cemetery and finds his father's grave. He calls him coward because he couldn't have even said it to his face. He then finds Sam's grave. He cries and asks him to forgive him. Wally then finds him, and Frank cries in his arms and says he has no family. Wally says he is his family. Frank says he is sorry and they kiss. Beth arrives and says the family wants him to come back. He says no, and she tells him about the conversation they had where he told her to be what she wanted to be. She says it changed her life, and now she finds he can't do the same. Frank asks Wally to come meet his family. Frank returns home, where Mike is waiting. Mike tells him no problem and hugs him. Kitty is accepting, and Neva is thrilled to finally meet Wally, though her husband appears very uncomfortable. Frank's aunt tells him he's going to hell, and he tells her he knows it's the best she's capable of. Mama tells him nothing will ever change how precious he is to her, and he cries in her arms. She tells him his father was scared of him, and that Mac's brother was gay, and she has known for a long time. Mama gets to meet Wally, who gives her a necklace. Later the family sits in the backyard, and Beth says in narration she felt like they were all exactly where they were supposed to be. A wonderfully acted, moving and heartfelt film. The most emotional and memorable scene is the reading of the will. The scene was very heart-wrenching. The story may seem light and simple, but more than that, it is so deep and important with many life messages. The acting is very convincing and is the best thing about this film. However, Frank's character is unlikable, unlike Wally, who is able to bring humor and joy. This film was supposed to be a coming-of-age journey for Beth, but towards the end Beth's character was somewhat relegated to the background. Overall, this is still a good film, as it shows the hardships and struggles of a gay person growing up in a relationship with a homophobic and religious father when gayness was not widely discussed. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notification.